Our next speaker is Jovana Marovic, Executive Director of Politikon Network from Montenegro. Jovana was very prominent these days in local and regional media, actually commenting about the strategy, the country reports, and so on. I'm under impression that while not all the regional governments were equally happy about the wording of the strategy, I would say the vast majority of civil society organizations actually welcomed its clear language and straight messaging on what we should do. So it would be really great to hear your opinion about what is written there and what civil society's role can be in this offered time frame.
Thank you, Milica. I will start with some general overview. Where are the Western Balkans countries at the moment? Let's start with some positive things. Trying to summarize key achievements of the European integration process, I think that the most important part is that all the Western Balkan countries actually are implementing some kind of reforms. They are at the different stages of the European integration process, but there is some progress in each of the countries. Basically, there is some kind of improvement when we are talking about transparency, and also speaking about civil society. Civil society is part of the process, and comparing situation like 5 years ago or 7 years ago in Montenegro, this level of cooperation between civil society and the government was measured by the number of government officials from the government at the meetings, organized by the NGO parties, and now in Montenegro we have public discussion as obligatory mechanisms for all kind of legislation or for all laws in Montenegro. Speaking again about benefits of the European integration process, I think that the most important part is quality of legislation, or to put it in this wording, laws and procedures are actually benefited a lot from this negotiation or European integration process. But speaking about, and this is positive thing about European integration process. And speaking about still issues and weaknesses of the Western Balkan countries, I think that the strategy actually highlighted precisely the most important issues. First of all, clientelism, then political elites or ruling parties are using state administration as a tool for their own interests. Also, there is, lots of non-democratic mechanisms in all public policies. For example, and the most important thing is actually that political elites in our countries actually do not want to change undemocratic practices, because they will lose their power if they are improving such practices. For example, misuse of public resources, and also control over employment procedures, and also reallocation of the social benefits and the other mechanisms. The second thing is actually that this credible enlargement strategy for the Western Balkans actually proved that the EU's approach so far wasn't that much successful when it comes to the Western Balkans. And actually EU in this strategy highlights some new instruments which should help to improve situation on the ground. But basically the EU still has to develop such instruments, and civil society hopefully will help it in this kind of activity. Truth thing is that the Western Balkan countries actually do not believe that our institutions are independent, and for example, every second citizen of the Western Balkans does not believe in independence of the judiciary, for example, and this is the most important part when it comes to the rule of law in our countries. Speaking about the role of the civil society in this process, as I already said, the most important part is that the civil society is part of the process. It is involved in the decision making, but actually it is involved on technical and not on substantial basis. And having said that, actually, I think that usually the civil society fails to change or to improve policy outcome in our countries. And the most important part is actually that the EU and the Western Balkan countries are actually happy that civil society, that there are procedures for the civil society involvement. They are not taking into consideration our recommendations and our inputs and our initiatives. Civil society is really active in our countries, and they are providing recommendations and analysis. They are monitoring public policies in our countries, and even if there is no donor support for such kind of activity, and this is really good because civil society considers this as obligation, you know, like a part of their activities towards democratization of the society. I think that it is also important to highlight that actually, while Western Balkan leaders are cooperating under the pressure, cooperation between civil society organizations is actually self-initiated. And that's really, really a good example how regional cooperation should actually look like, or how it should work. I already said that the problem with consideration of the civil society inputs and how government or authorities are taking into or not taking into consideration proposals and recommendations from the civil society. But as I said, the EU is also important part of this puzzle. Actually, in order to have more active, more impact of the civil society activities, there are many tools which or many activities which should the EU actually take in order to have a better role of the civil society in the Western Balkans. The first part is regarding monitoring and reporting tools. Milica already said that we are somehow happy with the sharp statements in the strategy, and but as we heard this morning, it's good when it comes to, you know, assessment of the general situation in the Western Balkans region. But it's not like that this kind of dynamics is also used in country reports, or at least when it comes to Montenegro, because this new country report, we expected so much from this country report about, you know, clear assessment, clear guidelines, clear recommendations, some kind of connection between benchmarks and priorities for each year of our negotiations. And we have same report as like 2 years ago, or, you know, I think that now is time, now is momentum, you know, to provide something more concrete and something more substantial from the European Commission. And when the EU says, or the EC says in the country reports, that it is concerned about situation regarding freedom of media in Montenegro, or regarding political influence over the public broadcaster. It should put this as precondition for example, this year for Montenegro in the negotiation process, and not just highlighting and like recommending to do something in this field. Speaking about, let's say, a unique approach towards the Western Balkans in the European integration process, I think that it is also important to have, and this is instrument from the strategy, to have action plans for chapters 23 and 24 for all Western Balkan countries, and these action plans should be developed in cooperation with civil society and with the governments and the Western Balkan countries. Same applies parties to action plan from the credible enlargement strategy. Actually, we now have the action plan for 2 years, and it is really important to consult civil society during preparation of the action plan for another 2 years. I think that the European Commission, there are some good reports from the last year from Montenegro, from the European Commission regarding the current state of play or current issues within the chapters 23 and 24 regarding the rule of law. And I think that the same instruments should be applied, or same reports should be prepared for all Western Balkan countries. Also, I think that one of the instruments from the strategy is that the EU will develop or will organize some kind of expert missions for Western Balkan countries, but these missions should be high-profile and high-level missions, because so far in Montenegro we don't see any kind of impact of such experts mission. There was a struggle in Montenegro to make these instruments or these reports from the expert missions public, and the Ministry of European Affairs actually published it last year upon the request for free access to information. And these reports are, for example, in some I don't know, part of the ministry. No one actually knows about it apart from the NGO which actually filed this request for free access to information. Also, as I said, it is really important to have this kind of regional networking and regional coalitions between the civil society organizations in Western Balkans, but it should be somehow supported from European Commission, even politically, you know, because the European Commission should use these findings more in its reports. Finally, I think that the civil society organizations should support or should provide some kind of assistance to the European Commission to develop or to improve reporting and monitoring tools for the Western Balkans, because we are on the ground, we are monitoring the process, and we actually know how to improve action plans and how to improve indicators and all other, you know, technical issues regarding this process. And finally, I think that this process, as we heard this morning, should be like open for all interested parties that actually can contribute to the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Jovana.